Moving on down the list to another team that went 9-8, just missed out on the playoffs, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Their main losses were quarterback Gardner Minshew, who filled in for majority of the year last year after Richardson got hurt. I almost called him Josh Richardson, like from the NBA, but it's Anthony Richardson. So sorry about that. And then running back, they also lost running back Zach Moss, who filled in greatly for them last year. It was a little bit of a surprise in terms of a contributor. But in terms of additions, they went and grabbed quarterback Joe Flacco, so obviously to supplant that backup role after he was on that tear for Cleveland at the end of last year. And then on defense, they brought in defensive tackle Raekwon Davis from the Dolphins, who's solid, just size or space eater. And then on the draft, they went and got edge rusher Laiatu Latu out of UCLA in the first round. And then the second round, they went wide receiver Adonai Mitchell out of Texas at pick 52. And then they went and got tackle Matt Goncalves out of Pittsburgh in round 3. So, John, throwing it to you, of course, here. Your thoughts on the Colts. And obviously this, technically, in a sense, is Anthony Richardson's kind of real rookie season because he only played like 3 or 4 games last year. So your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I still have the same general concerns about Anthony Richardson that I had when they drafted him, which is including last year's games. This man has started 17 career games since high school. That's not a lot of experience. Like that was a criticism that we levied towards Trey Lance. And yet Anthony Richardson has even less experience than Trey Lance did. So I still have that concern. Now, Richardson, in his 2 games that he played fully healthy, he showed a lot of promise. But I still have that same concern because, like you said, this is ultimately his rookie year. Now, albeit last year, he obviously was getting to learn the playbook a whole year. So maybe he can come out and look pretty solid and better than maybe he even did last year. But that's my general concern about Anthony Richardson. And there's also the concern that he has always been injury prone. For some reason, this has just been something that even back in his college days has prevented him from being able to play. And I think clearly the Colts are aware of that, considering that Gardner Minshew leaves, they've clearly prioritized the backup quarterback position and bring in Joe Flacco, who was probably the most coveted backup quarterback you could get on the market in terms of a veteran presence for a team that still wants to win games because of what he was able to do in Cleveland. So I think they're aware that Anthony Richardson has the injury problems, and we're hoping that he can stay on the field the entire year and definitely see what he can do. In terms of the offseason, outside of that quarterback stuff, they really didn't do much, like you said. I like what they did in the draft, though. I had Laiatu Latu as my top edge rusher in the draft, and that this defense has needed people off the edge for a couple of years now. Obviously, they drafted Kwity Paye, and he's been okay for them. And then DeForest Buckner on the interior has obviously been fantastic for quite some time. But outside of that, they've really needed like a true top edge rusher to complement DeForest Buckner on the interior. And like I said, I had Laiatu Latu as my top guy. So maybe he can be that presence for them, or at the very least can just be another impact player. And then they also drafted Adonai Mitchell at wide receiver, who I was also a big fan of. He was in my top 5 receivers for the draft class. And they've done that back-to-back years where they got Josh Downs and Adonai Mitchell, 2 guys who I was very high on, to add in with Michael Pittman. I read Michael Pierce because him and Alec Pierce are right next to each other. All good. But they added him with Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, who I have heard, by the way, that Alec Pierce has had a great offseason and has built a lot of chemistry with Anthony Richardson. So I like the general depth they have in this wide receiver room. I feel like they have a lot of guys who are young, could be impact players. We'll see how Michael Pittman does, because last year, I will say, Minshew force-fed him the ball a ton, and he definitely produced. But does he continue to do so? Obviously, Josh Downs was out at that point. Adonai Mitchell was not a part of the room. And everything I'm hearing about the way that the Colts are viewing Adonai Mitchell during this offseason is they're saying that he looks like a true alpha wide receiver 1 out on the outside. And he clearly has the speed, because the guy ran like a 4.35 or something like that. He's got the height. He's got the playmaking ability. So can he be that true alpha receiver for them? Because I will say for Michael Pittman, he definitely has had moments, but it's always felt more like he was like, your possession receiver, your kind of number 2. It's never felt like he was like that true number 1 guy, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs can do, and that wide receiver trio could be really deadly if all 3 of them can live up to their potential. So yeah, ultimately, I think the Colts offseason was a little bit low key. It was mainly about who they drafted. We'll see how they do. For me, they exceeded expectations last year, going 9-8 and having a winning season. I don't know if they do that again. It just really depends on a lot of internal development. But at the same time, if the offensive line can play like the offensive line that they're expected to play like, if Jonathan Taylor can, carry the weight of this offense on his shoulders and, be back to his peak form, the offense can certainly be moving. The big concern is the same concern that we've kind of had over the last couple of years, which is their defense, because although, I like the addition of Leatu Latu, you've got Kwity Paye, you've got DeForest Buckner, so you've got some key pieces along the defensive line. They add Raekwon Davis, who's solid. Don't really feel confident about the linebacker core. I mean, Zaire Franklin was solid, but other than that, you got, at least on this current depth chart, looks like EJ Speed and Segun Luby. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm not familiar with those 2 guys that much, and I don't really love the names I'm seeing here. And then the corners and the secondary has just been – it's been a big concern for quite some time. Honestly, quite frankly, outside of Kenny Moore II, I don't really have a lot of faith in much of this secondary. So, yeah, and even with Kenny Moore, I'll be honest, I think he's a little overrated. So, yeah, I think that even if the Colts offense is as good as I think they can be, the defense will hold them back.
Yeah, I'm going to start there because that was really my biggest concern with the Colts is, yeah, we've always hit it. We hit it draft-wise. Like, they just don't like investing in corner very much. And I know they run the Seattle 4-3 scheme that it just, once again, I just, like you alluded to, not in love with those corners. You already hit on that. Another concern of mine is, as much as I also liked Leatu Latu, and I think Kwity Paye solid with that Seattle scheme, usually, like just going off the other teams that have been successful, and we mentioned it with Houston, like depth at the edge rusher is important because those guys, they don't like to blitz a lot. They like to let the front forward do a lot of the work. And especially if you don't have a great secondary, those guys need to hit home. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe someone in the depth can step up. I know Samson Ebukam could have been that guy, but I know I believe he's dealing with injury already. So, you're asking a lot of Leatu Latu to, step in immediately. And obviously we mentioned Kwity Paye. He's been okay, but a little bit underwhelming in regards to being a first round pick, and what he's produced, but still solid there. So, and we'll see in the linebacker position because those guys did step up last year, but like we literally saw with Shaquille Leonard, like it didn't. You can die out real fast. It's a very physical and demanding position, especially in that scheme. So those are my main concerns. Really, especially the defense would be my biggest. On offense, you kind of hit it with Anthony Richardson. Needs to get more reps. Hopefully, it's gotten in his head also to slide more because that's also was an issue of why he got hurt. Was he does like to play that physical style, but and he even got told I think it was by Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, hey, you slide more after one of the games. Like, you gotta know when to cut your losses per se because you're very important to the team. And it's the NFL. Like it's a very physical league, so you gotta know when to cut bait and just not go for the extra 2 or 3 yards. But I'm interested to see if he can just get more reps under his belt and what this offense looks like under year 2 of Shane Steichen. Another full year now that you get Jonathan Taylor, because wasn't it last year too? Like half the year it was there's that cloud hanging over them of like are they going to trade Jonathan Taylor, right? Because I believe he wanted his extension, correct? I remember you were Jonathan Taylor, or was it 2 years ago that I'm thinking about? Because I know Zach
he got it last year at the beginning of the season, like I think like preseason, like week 3 or something.
I think like his ankle, right? Is that what happened or something? He's out for a couple of weeks. Is that why Zach Moss filled in? Sorry, I'm trying to remember.
Yes. So during the offseason, it seemed like the injury stuff, people were saying the injury stuff was the Colts like saying he was injured in order to like lower his value. But then when he got the contract extension, he did miss time. So I think I don't know what that story was around the whole like we're trying to lower his value, but clearly he was injured because he did miss time.
All right. So yeah, hopefully now that he's 100%. We can see that he can get back to that what he was obviously a couple of years ago, that explosive back that we both loved. And it'll be obviously make life on Anthony Richardson and the offense much easier if he's dominant in the pass game as well. So, it'll be interesting to see if someone can also, like you mentioned, kind of be that number two or even take the alpha role in the receiver room along with Michael Pittman Jr. because that's felt like they've been needing that there. So, and obviously if the O-line can live up to the potential that we all believe it can, with guys like Raymond, who was solid last year, obviously, Quentin Nelson. We talked about him in the guards the other episode, but obviously started his career great, and then they just had that weird fall off a couple of years ago that they really haven't gone back to. Him and really Braden Smith, and then obviously Ryan Kelly's also been really solid as well. So we'll see if they could kind of get back to their dominance there and how it may affect that offense under Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. So interesting team in the Colts. Be very hard to. Just very see how they go, and I see how both sides of the ball look. Because, like I said, I'm very fearful of that defense. I have no personal vendetta against Gus Bradley, but man, this might be it. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe he might. He's very good at scheming that scheme, but it just feels like that scheme's kind of been, I don't say outdated, but you got to do more than that nowadays, or at least have great talent. And like I already alluded to, I don't think the Colts really match that. So we'll see though if they can prove me wrong.